Luxury watch market is facing its biggest challenge in years. Retail sales are in a nosedive and Watches of Switzerland Group have seen its stock tank by 40% in the past year. China, once a massive growth engine, has also reported a 50% drop in demand. What does this mean for the future of retail, the grey market, and even the direction brands will take in 2025? And waitlists? Well, good riddance. Welcome back. Let's start with the Watches of Switzerland Group then, the powerhouse that houses brands like Rolex, Omega, Cartier and Patek Philippe. Now, their most recent set of financial results paints a very bleak picture indeed, showing a revenue drop by 10% year on year, and in the past 12 months that has therefore resulted in their stock price plummeting by a massive 38%, which, let me tell you, for a major organization like this is pretty catastrophic and represents an existential threat. Now, what have they done as a result of this? Well, revenue projections for the future year have been revised downwards, with economic headwinds in their major key markets such as China being blamed. So the China effect is really key in all of this, because here's the real shocker. Demand in China for luxury watches has fallen by nearly 50%. Let's put that into perspective then. Just a few years ago, luxury brands were betting their futures on BRICS nations: Brazil, Russia, India, China and South Africa, with China leading the change. So seeing a 50% drop in that major market suddenly leaves them with their pants down, having to look elsewhere. Let's talk about the grey market then, where the real shift is happening. Once a playground for flipping unworn Rolexes for double or even triple retail for some sports models, those days are well and truly gone. Now we find ourselves in a situation where most Rolexes trade below retail, and off the back of one of their biggest retail price increases we've seen of recent memory, some watches being increased by 14% at retail in January of this year. It really does leave most watches now as an under retail proposition if you go to buy them on the grey market. So flippers are disappearing, and this is where the big change is happening, and I think we will see a shift in 2025. You're not going to see too many unworn Rolex pieces or Rolex pieces of the year 2025 being advertised or available at grey market dealers, because what would be the bloody point in going to buy a Rolex to flip it if you're going to flip it for less than you bought it for? So the grey market dealers are not going to have supply of unworn pieces like they have done in the last 5 or 6 years, where really the grey market was the place to go for a new Rolex now. Well, that dynamic is going to change, and therefore it's going to be increasingly difficult to get your hands on a brand new Rolex unless you go and buy it at retail. So what does that mean for grey market dealers then? Well, because of that limiting supply of unworn pieces on the second-hand market, I think that is going to result in unworn prices sort of stopping. They won't move any more than what they already have done. We really have, I believe, reached the bottom of the slip in values for unworn pieces, because there's a simple dynamic of play here of supply and demand. If there isn't competition in the market driving a price down for, say, for example, a brand new unworn Rolex Yachtmaster 40 with rhodium dial, if there's not that competition in the market driving that price down, then there's no reason for a grey market dealer to reduce the price to compete, which means that the prices that you see now, I'm sure, for now and for the foreseeable, will be set for unworn pieces. Now, obviously, that's different with a handful of stainless steel sports watches which still do trade above retail. We will still see them pop up on the grey market at slightly above the retail because there's a flipping opportunity there. But generally, that means that grey market dealers are going to have to diversify and will be offering older stock, and therefore the grey market becomes a place where the majority of watches you can get cheaper. The grey market is once again the place where you can pick up your dream watch for less. So to summarise, what does the grey market become then in 2025? Two things. Number one, now the grey market is the place to go for the majority of Rolex watches that you can pick up below retail, something unimaginable just a few years ago. And number two, as the scarcity of unworn pieces manifests on the grey market, that will result in prices as they are currently because of a reduction in competition and downward pressure on prices. It will result in those prices being locked in. So we can expect more stability, I would imagine, on the grey market, and certainly for unworn pieces going into this next year. Where will brands go next then? And what does this mean for the new releases that we can expect to see in 2025 and beyond? Now, I know it's a little bit too early to talk about Watches and Wonders, but of course it is the key event of the year. And I think Watches and Wonders is going to be very different to what we saw last year. Last year we saw brands release few watches, and those watches that they did release typically were in the upper echelons of high horology and were very expensive pieces, the kind of watches that you wouldn't even see a price tag on in the store. You'd have to price on request that particular timepiece because they're for the mega rich. My prediction for 2025 then is that I believe we're going to see a shift towards affordability. Watches that will be released to target new entrants to the market. They've got to do something to try and fill that gap of people that have left the hobby. Those who have aspirations of owning luxury, but their budgets cannot stretch to six-figure pieces. And as such, this year, I think we're going to see a couple of common themes of new releases unfolding before our very eyes. Number one, I predict that we will see a quartz resurgence. Now, it once was normal that Omega would produce Omega Seamasters, the 300M line, in quartz and in automatic caliber. You could choose to save a couple of £1,000 on the quartz model, or if you had the budget, go for the automatic model. Now, it's become a case in the industry, a snobbery sort of manifest by watch enthusiasts like myself, that quartz is bad and that quartz can't possibly be luxury because luxury watch collecting is all about the romanticism of a mechanical movement, a living machine. Well, let's be honest, most of the new entrants to the market, they start off with quartz watches, and that's why brands like TAG Heuer, who really have relied heavily on quartz models like the Formula One, are still doing very well. So I think it would make perfect sense to see brands like Omega move back into quartz and offering key models in quartz variations, or even entry-level models with Sellita-based movements. We know that Tudor offer the Tudor Royal with a modified Sellita-based movement. This is a watch which at retail is only a smidgen over £2,000, which is a big difference to the Black Bay line, for example, which is well over £3,500. So there's a big difference there, and that kind of pricing strategy, you save the most money on the movement, but you still get the name, you still get the brand on your wrist. We've seen in the last couple of years the overwhelming success of the plastic moon swatches. Why did they do well? Because they've got Omega stamped on the dial, but in essence they are a pile of garbage, as we all know. But for £300, most people can afford them, and therefore most people who wanted one just went out and bought one. So we had a crazy situation where most of the profitability of the Swatch group came from Swatch and came from the plastic moon swatch. I think we're going to see brands getting desperate and really trying to figure out how they can shift towards affordability to entice new entrants into the market. Do you agree that we are heading into uncharted territory for the luxury watch industry? What do you think brands need to do to thrive and survive heading into 2025? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. Please go check out vinnyfrancis.com, and thanks very much for joining me. Cheerio.